Hello everybody and welcome to my review of Nisioisin's light novel Nekomonogatari Black. Now, depending on the numbering that you go from, if in Japanese this is the 6th volume of the Monogatari series, in English it is the 7th. It is published in English by Vertical, and if you would like to pick up your own copy and support the channel at the same time, I do have links in the description to both Amazon.com as well as Book Depository. In Nekomonogatari Black, we are going back in time. Much like Kitsumonogatari, which told us the events of spring break that Araragi references throughout the Bakemonogatari books, this one now goes to about a month after that spring break to Golden Week, and tells the story of when Hanakawa found herself possessed by a cat. We have had this story discussed a great deal over the previous Monogatari books, and we even caught a glimpse of Hanakawa's cat self in the last story in the Bakemonogatari series, Tsubasa Cat. So some of the material in this book is a little bit of a rehash. Like, we already kind of know Hanakawa's somewhat messed up family history, although this one goes even further to sort of explain that. And it also provides us with a great deal of insight into Hanakawa's character and how maybe she's a little bit more damaged than what her cool, collected, and intellectual exterior presents throughout the rest of the books. Now, what's really funny about this novel is that in terms of timing, this book came out at the point where the Bakemonogatari anime was being shown in Japan. In fact, Nisioisin kind of mentions in the afterword to this volume that the anime actually helped to kind of motivate him to move forward and finish this volume. And in a way, I think this book really benefits from that, because there is so much breaking of the fourth wall in this book, where characters will have discussions and randomly talk about how this particular scene will not be suitable for the anime, or how this would be a good place for an episode to end, and it just goes on and on. I mean, it could be like a drinking game if you read this book. The only other thing that would make it dangerous is if you include all of the different fetishes that Nisioisin throws into this, because then you're probably going to die from alcohol poisoning. In the first 80 pages of this book, it is almost entirely a conversation between Araragi and his littlest sister, Tsukihi, and it's all about, well, it goes all sorts of different places, but primarily it focuses on love and on panties. Yeah. And at some point, as I'm reading it, and it's funny because even Nisioisin, when he's writing this section, he kind of says, if you're here because you watched the anime, you might want to just skip ahead 30, 40 pages, whatever. And what's funny is when you get 30 or 40 pages and they're still having the conversation, they mention the fact that, sorry, anime fans, we're still talking here. And this is what I mean. The book has so much kind of winks and nudges and, sort of like a bit of fan service to people who have been reading the book series, almost like Nisioisin imagined that people were coming to this book having watched only the anime and not read the other novels. Like, even Araragi at some point is kind of like, I need to watch what I'm doing right now because it's going to give anime viewers the wrong opinion of me. And it's a true story. I mean, his big conversation with Tsukihi it's pretty risque at points. Yeah, major Siscan kind of thing going on in this thing. And it's almost like Nisioisin's almost trolling at this point. I'm not saying that I have any evidence to believe this is true, other than my impression as a reader. But as I'm reading particularly these first 84 pages, which, as I said, really don't have a lot to do with the story, they do speak to sort of how Araragi feels about Hanakawa and kind of lays the groundwork for why he isn't dating her, but instead is dating Senjo Gahara. it's almost like at this point, Nisioisin is like, I got my paycheck. I've got you guys hooked. You're obviously into this. And I might as well just push boundaries and push buttons and just do whatever I want because you guys are still buying it. I mean, he's got everything happens in this first 84 pages that, you know what, in almost any other light novel, I'd probably be horrified that it's going on between an 18-year-old boy and his, I think he says she's 4 years younger, so 14-year-old sister. Or is she 12? I don't know. You guys feel free to correct me, but I thought he had said there was a 4-year difference. So, or maybe it's 4 years between him and Karen, and then another 2 between Karen and Tsukihi, which would make her 12. Anyway, in any case, she's young, and yeah, it's really a weird dynamic between these siblings. But I mean, if you've read all the books up to this point, you've already seen those dynamics between these siblings and inappropriate conversations, comments, touching. Yeah, like I said, in just about any other light novel, I probably would be questioning it and be kind of a little creeped out by it. But I think it's because Nisioisin is so focused on wordplay and messing with words and turns of phrase and so forth that it really does feel like the whole thing is just playing you. It feels like he's just messing with your head and that he's intentionally just throwing out this ludicrous and over-the-top kind of stuff. And I don't know whether it's that, and again, these are just all my opinions, but I don't know whether it's that he's doing it because it's almost like a let's see what I can get away with, or if it's a let's test you to see just how dedicated you are to this series to see if you get through it. Or, you know, if this is just stuff that he's like always wanted to write and figures like, hey, I've got a series that's making me enough money and got enough followers that I can get away with it today. I really, as I said, I have no idea. Or maybe, you know, Nisioisin is just truly a bit of a ciscon pervert, etc. And he's just expressing that element of himself in this book. Books, I should say, because really, there's enough of stuff in all of the Monogatari series to suggest certain fetishes on the part of the author. It's actually really funny to me. This is the last book where Araragi is the sole first-person narrator. In fact, the next book, Nekomonogatari White, it is Hanakawa who is going to be the first-person narrator. And I'm really, really excited to read that book. First off, I mean, I've always been excited to kind of get Hanakawa's point of view because I've always found her to be a very interesting character. And particularly when you read this book and you start seeing a lot more of what is behind and below the sort of behavior that she shows everybody else, it just makes her this really fascinating character in sort of a creepy but fun kind of way. And I'm very interested to see how she tells the story and how she sees herself and how she sees Araragi, because Araragi, when you're reading these books, you do get the impression that he isn't the most reliable narrator. You do get the impression that, you know, even though it seems like a lot of these girls seem to see him favorably, you're also kind of like, I wonder if they really do. Or if he's just kind of like, you know, a cute misbehaving dog that you pet on the head and you're kind of like, yeah, good boy. But you're like, wow, just because you're cute. Otherwise, you'd be really annoying. So I just, yeah, I don't know. I am looking forward to seeing that flip in perspective. And of course, now this is, as I said, it is a prequel of sorts. If you were going to put these chronologically, it would be Kisu Monogatari, then this Nekomonogatari Black, and then the Bake Monogatari series. And then, of course, Nisei Monogatari as well. So chronologically, it's the second story in the Monogatari series. And it's kind of interesting because it's, when you read it and you see what's happened, it starts to play with your opinions of just maybe what Hanakawa is really like during all those other stories that we saw her. But even Araragi at points is, again, breaking the fourth wall, makes comments about how, you're rewriting your character. He says this to Tsukihi at one point. He's like, you're rewriting your character. And she's like, well, I have to make myself relevant because I was only in one book really of the whole series so far. And my character didn't really stand out that much. And as I said, if you're a fan of the Monogatari series, I think you'll really, really like this volume. The actual story of Black Hanakawa, of the cat-possessed Hanakawa, it occupies about 2/3 of the book. Like I said, the first third is basically Araragi and Tsukihi talking. That story has a lot of interesting elements, and certainly, as I said, goes a long way to question the character of Hanakawa and sort of pose that question of how much of her behavior is a facade and how much of it is the truth. So it makes her character a lot more interesting. But I think the real fun of this book is the whole fan service aspects of it. The fact that at this point Nisioisin is writing so much that is speaking to the fans of the books, because he is almost cynically imagining that there's people reading this that aren't familiar with the previous books. They're just jumping on because of the anime. It's really a lot of fun if you've read the series up to this point. And the other thing that I kind of noticed, maybe not as much with the other books, but I really noticed it with this one, and I guess it's because there are such lengthy conversations in it. The pacing, the writing itself is very, very quick. I mean, there are quite a lot of points in the book where characters are just throwing out like only a couple word sentences back and forth at each other. Again, this whole word play and the back and forth, and it's really quick. Like, I thought when I initially picked this up and I started reading this conversation between Araragi and Tsukihi, I thought to myself, I kind of flipped through and I was like, oh my God, this is almost a third of the book, just these two talking. And I thought this is going to get tedious. But I actually found it really enjoyable and kind of plowed through it really fast. And I think it is because there's just this very quick back and forth. The ideas are toyed with all over the place. Nisioisin's love of wordplay is just wildly on display. And like I said, when you combine that with this sort of, love notes type idea to fans of the book so far, and this sort of like, oh, if you're an anime fan, you probably won't get this at all. But just that suggestion that if you are a novel fan, on the other hand, this is probably right up your alley. Just those things and the continual breaking of the fourth wall. It's just a lot of fun, this book. Like I said, when I was reading it, I just couldn't help but feel like this is an author who suddenly just feels unleashed. And I mean, Monogatari up to this point certainly hasn't been that restrained. So you can imagine just even how more so this book felt to me, that here's an author that's just so comfortable with the material, and at this point it's just like, I can write whatever I want and people are just going to read it. And it's an enviable position, I think, as a writer. I really do. I have to hand it to him, and I have to be envious of him, the fact that he's in that position. So it's very, very interesting to me to see where this will now go, having a different narrator and really kind of moving beyond where the Bakemonogatari anime would have ended. This one, of course, it is considered the end of season 1 of Monogatari. Basically, of course, because it's lumped together because it is a prequel story. And as I said, because it is the final one where Araragi is the only narrator. So really, you can I'm wondering just how much of a shift we're going to see in terms of tone and everything else with Nekomonogatari, which is coming out in about a month and a bit. It was supposed to be coming out at the end of January, but it has been postponed until the end of February. So we still have a little bit of time to go until we can check that one out, but thankfully not that long. So again, if you've been a big fan of the Monogatari series, I think this book is totally up your alley, not just because you like it because of, you know, your existing enjoyment of the Monogatari series, but also because it really does feel like Nisioisin wrote so much of this book for fans of the novels. So I think you'll really, really enjoy it. As I said, there's all sorts of questionable behavior, but even just the fact that the characters themselves recognize it as being questionable is kind of funny in and of itself and kind of breaks the fourth wall. So I think you'll enjoy this one if you are coming at this without experiencing the other books, which, I mean, at this point, I don't really know why you would, but if you are, you really should just go read the other books first so that you get the proper run-up to this one, because I really think you get a lot more out of it if you've read all the other books up to this point. So those are my thoughts on Nekomonogatari Black. My next review is going to be on volume number 10 of Is It Wrong to Try to Pick Up Girls in a Dungeon? This has been one of my favorite series. I really enjoy this series, and so many of you have been on me about getting onto this book and reading it, because I'm guessing that volume number 10 has some pretty shocking things going on in it. So yeah, I'm very excited to read this, particularly of where volume 9 left off. It suggested a fairly interesting and dark direction for the series going forward. So that'll be my next review. So if you're brand new to the channel and you love light novels, don't forget to subscribe. I do 2 to 3 reviews every single week, as well as a weekly countdown of the top 10 best-selling light novels in Japan. Thank you so much for joining me in this video, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Till then, bye-bye for now.